What was your view on the failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba in 1961?
The Cubans had mostly escaped from Cuba, and they were mostly in Miami and in Florida. And they decided we'll get together and we'll make an army and we'll go in and do it. And they were encouraged all the way along, and they were given guns, ammunition, and support in that regard. And as far as I know, the Cubans, these rebels, they didn't have any warships or any way, and Cuba, from Key West, Florida to Cuba is 90 miles. And the water's deep, you can't walk across there. So if they didn't have any warships, how did they get to I think the Bay of Pigs was on the other side of the island. I think it was in the southwest area of the island. Cuba is this way and comes down. And I think the thing was over here on the, I'll say the southwest part of Cuba. I think that's where it was. And if they had to go across the 90 miles of ocean and go around the end of the Cuba and invade in here, how'd they do it? I would say it was American warships. But apparently, from my guessing is, when we put them onto the shore, or in small boats to get to the shore, we said, okay, good luck, guys. And we took off because we weren't involved directly into the invasion. We were one of the participants, but we weren't going to do any fighting. This is what my observation is. I'm pretty sure that's right. So I think it was just very poor communications. You had real military people in Cuba that they had spent their life in the military. And you had these Johnny-come-latelys that took some practice and stuff like that. But they were not real top quality soldiers. And they were invaded, and they apparently, of course, they might have been tipped off that this was coming in the Bay of Pigs, where the Bay of Pigs was. That I don't know, but my guess, if you dug into it deep enough, you might find that they were set up. But that's a guess on my part.
Do you believe that the general American public share the same views?
Well, I'll say dismayed as what transpired, because we were supposedly backing them, but it wasn't, apparently there wasn't enough agreement, and when they were getting beaten, they had no recourse to surrender. They were just outnumbered and outgunned and everything, and our ships were probably further out to sea, and they had no way of getting them. You know, we didn't go in to rescue them, not that I'm aware of.
From my research, I have found that the American government was humiliated as a result of the failure of the invasion. Do you feel the same?
We didn't back them up. Well, and it should have been, if we were not going to back them up, it should have been well publicized. You know, you don't turn around and back a guy so far and then walk away the other direction. We weren't taxi drivers, I don't think, you know, with our own military.
Do you think that the United States had the right to invade Cuba and overthrow Fidel Castro?
No, we didn't have a right to. We have too many of these rights that we can invade here and we can invade there. And there's somebody else paying the bills, you know, the taxpayers paying the bills. But this is in hindsight. We've had too many since the Bay of Pigs for these kind of situations. So in retrospect, I'd say we should mind our own business.
Before the American government was aware that the Soviet Union was installing missiles in Cuba, they repeatedly denied doing so. Do you have any knowledge of this? And if so, how much faith did you have that the Soviets were telling the truth?
Well, we at the time we didn't believe the Soviet government very much at all, but we had the spy planes. I think it was called the U-2. You may have heard that name.
Yeah, the U-2 spy planes.
Yeah, and they were flying over. I think it was the U-2 was flying over. They were very high up, but they were taking pictures, and they had the pictures of the missiles going into place in wherever they were in Cuba. I guess there was a few places. How many, I don't know. So they had positive pictures, proof pictures, that everybody was lying. So this is what brought the Cuban Missile Crisis to a head. And the Soviets were shipping missiles into Cuba, and we had, again, planes taking pictures of the Soviet ships on the way to Cuba with missiles up on the deck. So, wherever they're going, they're going to a flea market somewhere? I don't think so. They were going to Cuba. And it was a very, very hairy situation.
What knowledge did you have on the Cuban Missile Crisis prior to October 22nd when Kennedy announced this matter to the public?
When you have children, you got a job and you have children, you don't have a lot of time to pay attention to what these people are doing. Like they don't pay much attention to what I'm doing, So I can't give you any observations on it.
What thoughts came to you when President Kennedy announced that there were missiles in Cuba which could strike the United States?
I think I was anti-Cuban and anti-Castro to the extent that the government was. But again, most of we were working people. We didn't pay much attention to that kind of stuff. And there's an awful lot of instances where we don't listen to the other guy. Cuba, Castro they had a revolution. But it was not a good government. It wasn't a government like we're supposed to have for the people. And this is why Castro they had the revolution to begin with. We're having them now in Egypt and Libya and all the other places. And these people have been in leading the government for 20, 30 years, some of them more. Castro has been in since, I'm guessing, sometime in, 50s or 60s. This is 40, 50 years. And, but at that time, he was only in a short time, and we probably didn't have as much communication with him as we should have.
How concerned were you that this would lead to a full-scale nuclear war between the United States, Cuba, and the Soviet Union?
I was concerned with that, and the government was very concerned with it. And as it happened, that Khrushchev finally decided that they were playing chicken, but they might lose, and so he decided Cuba wasn't worth it, and because if he had opted for the fight, there would have been millions of Soviet citizens killed, maybe including Khrushchev himself. And when you're presented with that kind of a situation, you do some serious thinking. And well, maybe, what are we doing? We're in there for Cuba, and we don't really owe Cuba anything. It isn't worth losing hundreds of thousands and probably millions of our own people. So he decided that he wasn't gonna play chicken anymore, and he said, "Okay, we'll bring the missiles back to the Soviet Union."
During the 13 days that the Cuban Missile Crisis lasted, how often were you updated about it?
We were all keeping a close watch on it because, as I say, it was a case of, well, are we going to die today or tomorrow? And that's how close it was that we would be. And do we follow the media? We followed it. Yes, you were following. There was a lot of military activity all the way along the East Coast. What is it? I think the naval base in Norfolk, Virginia was one of the biggest in the country, probably one of the bigger ones in the world. It was a big base. That would be a target for the missiles. Get rid of the ships and get rid of the people that run the ships, that kind of thing. You know? Boston is a big city, important, New York City, and I worked in the GE, and you can't throw a rock from the GE plant in Lynn to Boston, but you get in the right place in Lynn and you can see Boston, you know, right across the water. So how close is that? Maybe it's 10 miles, but if there's a nuclear wave coming across the water, you're a dead duck. We were all very updated. We were updated on it when we just got bin Laden here within a month. And did you pay attention to it? I imagine you did. And you're basically a kid. So, yeah. Is it important? You better believe it's important.
How much faith did you have in the United States government and in President Kennedy to handle the matter successfully?
When you're talking nuclear energy, you're talking a whole different ball game than guns and bombs and stuff like this, because it just is. There's nobody wins. We won in Japan, but we've been concerned about it ever since, because they say that North Korea has nuclear bombs now, and Iran, and we don't like either one of them, and they don't like us. Like bin Laden didn't like us, and I'm sure the guys that have taken over from bin Laden are talking back and forth with Iran and North Korea. Say, why don't you share some of those things? So are you concerned about it? Well, I think you're aware of it, and you might not be concerned because, yeah, you're young and you got other fish to fry.
When the matter was finally resolved, how confident were you that it was actually over and would never occur again?
Well, I think we felt that it was over, and what was his name? Was it Mikhail Khrushchev? Something of that
Nikita.
name, huh? Something like that.
Nikita
But Khrushchev, I think he was the president of Russia at the time. And I think he capitulated. He chickened out, so to speak. So yeah, we won. But did we realize it? Did we feel assured that they would never do that again? I don't think so. No.
Thank you.
Okay, Matt. Oh.